Okay, so you want to buy a barge company. You've got the capital. You figure, buy a fleet of flat-bottomed steel boxes, strap them together, push them down the Mississippi. One barge carries as much as 70 trucks. Cheapest way to move bulk cargo in the country. More tons, more money, right? In late 2022, a single barge run from St. Louis grossed over $120,000. But the guy running the same route, same cargo, same week, he lost money on the trip. The difference had nothing to do with how much he shipped. It was about a contract he signed a year earlier, and a pricing system that hasn't been updated since 1976. So let's talk about what it costs to get on the river, how a 50-year-old number controls your margin, and why a company with 3,500 barges went bankrupt anyway. If you're starting small, you're looking at $8 to $14 million. One used towboat, that's the powered vessel that pushes everything, at around 2,000 horsepower, enough to move a dozen barges on a regional river, runs $1.5 to $4 million secondhand. 12 used dry cargo hopper barges, the standard containers of river freight, each one 195 feet long, go for $200,000 to $500,000 each. Budget another $3 to $5 million a year in fuel, crew, insurance, and maintenance before you move your first ton. You're running short routes on the Ohio River, the Illinois River, maybe the upper Mississippi. Small contracts, tight margins. The real game starts at $60 to $100 million. That's a regional line haul operation. Long-distance runs on America's 12,000-mile inland waterway network. The Mississippi, Ohio, Illinois, Tennessee, Missouri, all connected. 5 towboats in the 3,900 to 6,000 horsepower range, the kind that push 15 to 30 barges at once. A 15-barge tow is the equivalent of 1,050 trucks lined up for 35 miles on the highway, at a tenth of the cost. New, a 6,000-horsepower towboat runs $12 to $25 million. Used, $4 to $10 million. 100 barges, shore-based depots, maintenance yards, and crews. That's where it gets interesting. A single line-haul towboat needs 6 to 10 people on board around the clock. Captain, pilot, engineer, mate, deckhands, cook. And because crews work 28-day rotations, 28 days on the boat, 28 days home, you need 2 complete crews per vessel. A captain makes $900 to $1,300 a day. The all-in daily cost to run one towboat, fuel, crew, insurance, food, maintenance, comes to $15,000 to $25,000. Whether you're hauling cargo or parked on the riverbank waiting for a load. The top tier? That's Ingram Barge Company. Family-owned since the 1940s, roughly 4,000 barges and 140 towboats, the largest dry cargo fleet on America's inland waterways. Or Kirby Corporation, publicly traded, $3.4 billion in revenue in 2025, operating over 1,100 tank barges and 280 towboats. Kirby controls about 28% of the U.S. inland tank barge market. These companies didn't build their position by buying boats. They built it by acquiring other companies and the shipping contracts that came with them. But the equipment is only half the story. There's a law from 1920 called the Jones Act. It says every commercial vessel moving cargo between U.S. ports must be built in the United States, registered under the U.S. flag, at least 75% owned by American citizens, and crewed by Americans. That means a new dry cargo barge built in a U.S. shipyard costs $750,000 to $1.2 million. The same barge built in China? $300,000 to $400,000. You're paying 2 to 3 times the world price for every single piece of steel you float. But here's the trade-off. No foreign company can operate on American rivers. Period. It's the law. Think of it like the government telling you every part in your truck has to be American-made. Costs you double, but no foreign competitor will ever drive your route. That was the deal for 100 years. Until March 2026, when the government issued a temporary Jones Act waiver, letting foreign-flagged vessels into U.S. waterways to ease supply chain disruptions from the Middle East conflict. Extended through August. The domestic barge industry lost its mind Because if that waiver becomes permanent, the 2 to 3 times premium you've been paying for American-built equipment isn't a competitive moat anymore. It's just an expense. So, you've got the boats, you've got the barges. How do you actually make money? You load grain in Minneapolis, push it 1,800 miles south to the export terminals near New Orleans. Someone pays you per ton. Straightforward. Not exactly. The freight rate in this industry doesn't work like you'd think. It's based on a number from 1976. That year, the Waterways Freight Bureau published something called Tariff Number 7, a schedule of base rates for grain shipments on every major river segment in America. St. Louis to the Gulf, $3.99 per ton. That was 1976 money. The industry was deregulated that same year. The tariff was supposed to be a temporary reference point. 50 years later, every grain barge contract in the country is still quoted as a percentage of that same number. Here's how it works. The market sets a multiplier. The industry calls it percent of tariff. In a normal year, the multiplier runs somewhere between 200% and 400%. So if you're shipping from St. Louis, you take $3.99, multiply by 3, and you get roughly $12 per ton. A standard barge carries about 1,500 tons. That's around $18,000 in gross freight revenue per barge per trip. But when things go sideways, and they do, that multiplier explodes. During the 2022 Mississippi drought, the St. Louis multiplier hit over 2,000% of tariff, $80 per ton, over $120,000 per barge. Same distance, same river, 20 times the normal price. Think of it like surge pricing on a ride-sharing app, except your base fare was locked in 1976, and the surge multiplier is controlled by the weather, the harvest, and the Army Corps of Engineers. Not you. Never you. Now, here's where the real money is. 60 to 80% of capacity at any major barge company is locked into long-term shipping deals called COAs, 1 to 5 year deals with the giant shippers. Cargill, ADM, Koch Industries. The company's moving millions of tons of grain and chemicals every year. They pay a negotiated rate per ton. Predictable. Steady. Most COAs include fuel surcharge clauses. Diesel goes up, your rate adjusts automatically. The other 20 to 40% goes on the spot market. That's where the surges live. Harvest season, low water, supply chain panic. When the multiplier hits 2,000%, you print money. If you have barges available. This is why the real asset isn't the barge. It's the contract. In 2018, Kirby Corporation paid $419 million to acquire a company called Higman Marine. They weren't buying Higman's boats. They were buying Higman's customer relationships and the long-term shipping agreements attached to them. But there's a problem built into every single trip. Trade on American rivers flows one direction, southbound. From the Midwest to the Gulf, barges run full. Grain, coal, steel, all heading to export terminals around New Orleans and Houston. Northbound, only 60 to 70% carry cargo. Fertilizer, salt, gravel heading back up. The rest come home empty. That means 30 to 40% of your return trips generate zero revenue. You're burning $15,000 a day pushing empty steel boxes upriver. That dead leg cost gets folded into every southbound rate you quote. Now for the part where things go wrong. September 2022, a flash drought hits the Mississippi Basin. By October 21st, the river gauge at Memphis, Tennessee drops to negative 10.81 feet, the lowest reading ever recorded at that station. The feds slash the allowable draft. That's how deep a loaded barge sits in the water, from the normal 12 feet down to 9. Those 3 feet mean every barge carries 150 to 200 fewer tons. About a third of your payload, gone. Tow sizes are cut from 30 or 40 barges down to 12 or 15. Over 2,000 barges pile up waiting. Grain exports from Louisiana ports drop 79%. Total economic damage, over $20 billion. 1 year later, October 17, 2023, the same Memphis gauge hits negative 12.04 feet, a new record. 2 historic droughts in back-to-back years. Here's what that means if you're the one writing the checks. You've got 12 barges loaded with grain stuck south of Cairo, Illinois. Your long-term contract says deliver to New Orleans by month's end. You can't move. Fixed costs are running $18,000 a day. Late delivery penalties are piling up. 3 weeks later, you cut your losses and transfer the cargo to a larger operator, one with lighter draft boats and more route options, who can still move. The price they offer? A quarter of your original rate. You didn't get sunk by the river. You got crushed by your own contract. September 22, 1993. Dense fog on the Mobile River in Alabama. The towboat Mavilla, pushing 6 barges, misses a turn and strikes the support pier of a railroad bridge. The bridge doesn't collapse, the rails shift. About a foot of misalignment. Nobody on the towboat realizes what happened. Minutes later, Amtrak's Sunset Limited, a cross-country passenger train carrying 220 people, hits the misaligned track at full speed. 3 locomotives and 4 passenger cars derail into the bayou. 47 people die. It remains the deadliest wreck in Amtrak's history. A $200,000 barge tow, a bridge pier in the fog, 47 lives. Then there's what happens when the balance sheet breaks. In February 2020, American Commercial Barge Line, the 3rd largest inland operator in the country, running 3,500 barges and 190 towboats, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Over $1 billion in debt. ACBL came out 2 months later after wiping the debt and injecting $200 million in fresh equity. The barges kept moving, but the owners who built the company? Gone. Every dollar gone. 3,500 barges weren't enough to survive the debt. And underneath everything, the infrastructure holding this system together is aging out. More than 80% of the 218 lock chambers on U.S. inland waterways have exceeded their 50-year design life. Some date back to the 1930s. A standard lock is 600 feet long. A standard 15-barge tow with the towboat attached stretches about 1,100 feet. So you break the tow apart, lock through in 2 passes, 45 minutes each, and reassemble on the other side. 2 to 3 hours at every lock. And when one breaks down, your boat sits in line burning $500 to $1,000 an hour. The industry loses over $440 million a year just waiting. Time to pull it all together and answer the actual question. How much money do you make if you own a barge company? Option 1. Small regional operator. You put in $10 million, 1 used towboat, 15 used hopper barges. You run short routes, Ohio River, Illinois River, grain elevators to river terminals. Annual revenue, $6 to $10 million. Operating costs, fuel, crew, insurance, maintenance, $5 to $8 million. Net profit, $1 to $2 million. Payback period, 5 to 10 years. But one collision with a bridge pier triggers a lawsuit north of $50 million. One bad stretch on the spot market, and you're pushing steel for free. Option 2. Regional line haul operator. Investment, $70 million. 5 towboats, 100 barges, shore depots, 150 crew on rotation. 60% of your capacity locked into COA contracts, 40% on the spot market. Annual revenue, $50 to $80 million. Operating costs, $40 to $65 million. Net profit, $5 to $15 million in a normal water year. Margins swing between 10 and 20%. But in a drought year, when you're locked into contract rates while carrying a third less cargo per barge, you lose money. Payback period, 7 to 15 years. Option 3. Liquid tank barges, the premium end. Investment, $150 million and up. 30 double-hull tank barges at $2.5 to $5 million each, built to federal oil spill regulations. Specialized towboats, federally licensed tankermen, crew members certified to handle hazardous liquid cargo on every boat. You're hauling petrochemicals, refined products, asphalt, cargo that pays 3 to 4 times more per ton mile than dry grain. Annual revenue, $80 to $150 million. Net profit, $10 to $25 million. Margins, 15 to 25%. But the compliance cost is brutal. Every spill, every inspection failure is an existential event. This is the space Kirby dominates, and there's a reason it took them decades and billions in acquisitions to get here. The guys who own the barges check the river gauge every morning. The guys who own the contracts check their bank account.